Another friend was recently looking on some internet forums about these 3D printed face shields. It seems the Prusa ones are proving quite popular, and apparently they're having problems getting hold of the elastic which goes around the back of the visor part. And somebody on the forum had suggested that maybe we could get away with adapting one of the elasticated wrap straps to actually fit around here and serve as some kind of ad hoc strap to hold this thing on. And not long after, we actually had an inquiry from I think it was UCL down in London, University College, and they're obviously doing something very similar, putting together face shields which are coming from people 3D printing them apparently, and they requested some wrap straps to put on, and we sent them down a box load, and they had to modify them a little bit. They were cutting the end cells so that they fit over these lugs that are on either end, but apparently it works. They also experimented with using two straps tied together, which not really designed for, but you can do that, I suppose. But anyhow, they seem to have found a workaround solution, and then literally a couple of days after that I got sent this in my email, and there's a local company not too far away from here which I do know, and they're injection moulding these. I think they're fairly closely based on the Prusa design. I don't think they're exactly the same because they've got this band in here for bringing the face shield out a little bit, but again they were having problems getting the elastic. They've actually got some teachers apparently assembling all of these, so the injection moulding company is just spitting these out as fast as they can, but it's not going to solve the problem if they can't come up with an elasticated band on the end. So they're sending me a couple of these to have a look at to see if I can come up with a way of either making a custom wrap strap which will go around here, or modify the ones that I've got. So we've gone from doing the bands for face masks to now doing straps for face shields, but I'll wait for them to arrive and have a look at them and see what I can come up with. So these are the visors that I've received from Rutland Plastics, who are based in Rutland, Oakham. If you're not in the UK, that's the smallest county in the country. It's pretty much in the centre of the country. It's also earthquake central. We occasionally get a 4.5 trembler coming through, and these are injection moulded out of polypropylene, and there's a lug here at the end for attaching the elastic straps on, but they're having difficulty getting hold of the elastic. They're also having problems getting the acetate sheets that they're fitting on the front here. So what we've got to try and do is make a catch, a little clasp that will go on here, so that I can tie a wrap strap onto that end and then feed it through the same clasp on the other end to clamp it, and then we've got an elasticated band which should suffice in lieu of the elastic that's a little bit hard to come by. So I've had a look at this. I only got these yesterday evening. They were dropped off at home, and I've had a bit of a think, and what I think might work is if on this end piece I simply make a little clasp, roughly that sort of shape, and I want a hole here because we've got a 4mm peg on this little bit that's sticking out, and then if I bring that up with a slot and a T-piece at the end, that should be fairly easy to mould. It only needs to be about an inch long and maybe just over half an inch wide, and then the slot should allow us to just click it over there. It will then engage with the pin in that hole there, and the rest of it will come pretty much flush to this edge, and then I can tie a wrap strap off on this end here, and then on the other side I can feed a wrap strap through and it will latch, and in principle you can pull more cells through to tighten it, and if you took it off you would be able to spin that around and pull it out if you pulled it too tight. So that I think is the quickest, simplest solution. It does mean making a very rapid mould for this, which basically I want to try and do in the next few hours, get some moulded. Probably not going to make them in polyurethane initially because that needs drying, but it's the material of choice because this is polyurethane, so I know that all of the geometry is going to engage properly if I use the same materials. But I'll run some prototypes off in the softer Santoprene material that I've got in the machine at the moment, because that doesn't need drying and it's there waiting to go. So I've got a little aluminium plate, which is not a great deal bigger than a business card, to be honest. Well, that will do for getting a very quick prototype. I've just got to design this, pocket it out, and then we'll put it in the machine, mould something, see if it fits, see if it works, and if necessary I can iterate from there and come up with something a little bit better. They have actually made 25,000 of these apparently, and they might be making a lot more over the next few weeks. They've got furloughed teachers at one of the local schools fitting them all together, so they could be needing quite a lot of these if I can get it to work. But for that we'll just do a longer, larger mould with more cavities on, and then I'm pretty sure I could churn out thousands of these things in a day. So anyway, first things first, let's get the plate on the machine, let's cut this pocket out and a runner and all the rest of it, and take it from there. Right, it's a tiny plate, but that's close enough. It's not going to matter too much. I just need a couple of bolt holes here, a feed well, a runner, a cavity here and a vent, and if it doesn't work I can just drop it back on and add some more, so I can get 4 prototypes off this single mould. I'll probably have to dance the clamps around a little bit to get onto the thing, but that should do just for a quick test. So right, let's drill some holes. Right, so I've got some 5mm bolting holes. This is a 6mm plate, so I've gone all the way through, well, down to 5.5mm with an M5 slot drill, and I'll just punch through those with a standard twist drill. I've counterbored them down M10, worked my way up to an M10 and gone 4mm deep. That'll take the head of the bolt. Then we've got a feed point here, which is a 10mm ball nose, which I've gone 4mm deep. And then this is the runner. I think I'll do another pass just to clean that up, and this is an M6 cutter going down 2mm deep. So that's all of the initial geometry just to get us to the cavity itself. I'm going to need to add a small gate here and a small vent here. The cavity I'll probably go down 1.5mm and see how it is. I'm going to do that with a 2mm slot drill. The gate itself is probably the most awkward bit, because I want that robust enough so that when I pull this out of the mould it brings the part out as well without leaving them trapped, but on the other hand I don't want them so rigid that I've got to go in and snip them all off at the end. So there's a bit of a trade-off there, but we'll see how we get on. It's fairly easy to increase the depth of the gate if I have to, but that's taking about 15 minutes, so I'll do another quick pass there, then cut the vent and the gate, and then we'll put the cavity in, and by that point we're ready to give it a go. There's our cavity, 1.5mm deep, so all I've now got to do is add a small vent on this end just to let the air out, so we don't get an air pocket there, and then we can go and see if this thing will mould. Right, I've got the mould I've just cut up here. Took a little over an hour, and then just to balance the clamp I've put a dummy mould on the bottom which we're not actually going to be using. Don't need that nozzle on. Not going to need a great deal of plastic. I think that's probably sufficient. In fact, I may be overkill because I reckon this is only going to be a few grams per shot, but we're all up to temperature. Yeah, maybe another 10 degrees on the nozzle, but only one way to find out if this thing works. Let's put some plastic in. Right, I'm going to dose this to 5 cubic centimetres, which may be about right, don't know. Let's see what happens. First couple of shots will probably just be refilling the manifold. Doesn't look like we've got something. Ooh, nearly. These might be a bit too flexible, but just stiffen it up if necessary. No problem getting them out of the mould. Ooh, we got one. Okay, it might be a little too soft, but this is a fairly soft durometer material, and the gates do break off fairly easily. Okay, let's mould a few of these. Okay, first run is not completely successful, but it's not far off. They moulded fine, so I've got quite a lot of them coming off, and they do fit over these lugs on the end. This material is quite a bit softer than I would like. I can probably stiffen it up, but I don't want to go too much because then it might be tricky to get it over. I want a little bit of elasticity, so it does that. Now what I'm thinking is I could possibly fill in that bit there, which won't take very long to do, just to close this off, so I've got effectively 2 holes, and that I think will still stretch over. It does tie on okay. I've tied one on this end, but the problem is the latching on this side is not quite robust enough. If I put that through there and pull it down a couple of clicks, that sort of holds in, but it's not perfect. So if I can fix that, that's a fairly robust elasticated strap, and obviously just by pulling it down a few more clicks you can adjust it to wherever you want. The problem's going to be swapping that back, but I think if you took that off and just pull that through, that's doable. So it's just a case of reinforcing this end. Now I could possibly just try running this in a slightly different material just to see what happens, but I think what I'm going to do is just bridge that gap there, which won't take very long, and then we'll try it again and see if a slightly revised design will serve us any better. This is version 1.1, and basically all I've gone and done, actually if I use the same colour, is I've just cut through so it's now like that. So we have 2 separate holes, and hopefully these will still be soft enough to fit onto the wings, and indeed they are. And the acid test is whether with that smaller slot they're actually going to hold in place. And they do come undone, but maybe that's not such a bad thing, because that's going to hold sufficiently well for what you're doing, and if you do need to take them off, they are removable, so maybe that will do. So I think what I'm going to do is run off a few dozen of these just so that I've got something in the post today for review, and I think when I go to a slightly stiffer material in a polyurethane, because I don't know how this is going to be on tear resistance. Polyurethane, they use it for shoe soles for a good reason. It's because it doesn't really tear even if you get a little nick in it. This stuff, there is a weld line obviously right at the back here, and that's where there's going to be pressure on it, so I think PU is a better option. But that looks reasonably neat, it fits quite well, and you can swing it up and they are removable if necessary. So I think as a first attempt that's probably good enough to send down. I'm wondering if I can just maybe make that slot a little smaller. I've got about 1 millimetre space in there, so I could just make that a little bit smaller just to make it a bit better still, or I could put an extra bit of strengthening across that rear wall there. So maybe decisions. Let me have a think about that. What I've done is produced 2 new versions. So these here are essentially the same, but what I've gone and done is just reinforced the end bit there where it's going to tie off, and radius the corners so it doesn't tear through, and then I've dropped the central section just to make it a little thinner and easier to go over. These are in Santoprene. Did the same on this one, but this one I've left the little notch in it as per on the wrap strap. There's the reason for the little notch at the rear, because that's so you can put the tongue back through once you've tied it on and unpick it and remove it. So I've copied the geometry on that. I'm not happy with the Santoprene because it's a bit too soft, so I've just produced some in polyurethane, which is the same material as this. So the ones I prefer are actually Revision 3, which are the ones with a little hole in. So basically that threads through normally like you would on the standard wrap strap, and that latches pretty well now. You can still pull it back if you over tighten it, right, which is fine, but you need quite a lot of pressure to do that. Yeah. So just on a modest tie through, that's pretty reasonable. And of course you can still tie the thing off on either end. We can if I don't screw it up like that, and then that still fits nice and easily over the end. So all of that works quite well. And then with another one of these obviously on the other side, and then just threading that through, oops, the proper hole. That is now pretty robust and elasticated. And if anybody who's using this who's got a head that's enormous, then obviously you could just tie this off at both sides. If I pull that back through, I don't want it to come undone too easily, but I do want it to come undone if necessary. So obviously if you've got someone whose head is rather on the large side, if I did that and tied one on either end, now I've got two straps which obviously I can put through wherever I want and pull it down to whatever size I want. And because you've still got the little hole at the back, it's relatively easy to rethread it and undo the thing and take it off. So I think that covers pretty much all of the permutations as to how people are going to use these. The polyurethane, slightly stiffer, works better, good tear resistance, the radius corners, and I think the ones that I've just done with the little hole at the bottom so you can unthread it if you want, that seems to work fine. So they're moulding more of these this afternoon apparently, so I shall hear back in due course as to whether they're going to proceed with this design and how many they want.
Cool.